my name is Ilona, and in this video in my series Shadowwork, there are two things I want to talk about. First, trauma dumping and the manipulation technique DARVO. And I'll talk about that later. First, I want to start with trauma dumping. And that's really dumping your trauma on someone else. And a lot of people I've noticed, I am very sensitive myself, highly sensitive. We have this tendency of drawing in people that just talk to us about all these things, about horrible things that happened or traumatic or sadness, just everything that's happening to them. And we have this tendency of helping and listening to them. But in the meantime, they're draining our energies. So trauma dumping is someone that's not really interested in a balanced interaction. Usually they don't ask about your day or how you're doing. They really just start with what happened to them, how horrible it is and what's going on. They really just want your energy and attention. And after the conversation, usually they feel a lot better and you're exhausted or like, what happened here? And this strange feeling of, am I supposed to do something or not? But you've already done something by giving them attention and listening to them without being in a balance. There's nothing wrong with venting. Sometimes, when you're sad or angry or just want to talk to someone, then it's usually you just talk about something and then you talk to the other person. You let the other person talk and what's happening in their lives. There is like this balance going on in the conversation. But with trauma dumping, someone just calls you and you have to kind of be ready all the time, because I've noticed this in my past that if there is a time that it's not, suitable for you, they actually get offended. If you want to call them, then they never have time. At least that's my personal experience. Maybe sometimes they do in your experience, but usually it's really up to them when they call you, and then you have to be ready. Otherwise they're offended or hurt or whatever, working on the guilt feelings. And they just want to talk. They're not that interested in what is going on in your life, what is happening in your life. So they really dump your trauma and onto you. And it can happen in friendships. It can happen in relationships. It is also possible in work environment. Then trauma dumping has something very inappropriate. Maybe you're just with your colleagues. You don't have like this very intense bond with them, and that you're just at lunch and then suddenly someone is talking about the divorce and how horrible that is, and you hear all these very deep, sensitive things, and it's kind of inappropriate because it's a very strange situation then. So you hear all these very intimate things that maybe you don't really want to hear. So that's trauma dumping as well. It can be very inappropriately. It's also possible adults trauma dumping on their children or on children. You have to be very careful with that. I know from my family that has happened where a parent was really talking to their very young child about hurt, pain with the other, with their father or their mother, and talking about that to a child. That's not appropriate either. That is trauma dumping as well. So there are many layers to it, but it's very important. If you noticed when you talk to someone that they really are just talking about themselves, they're only interested in what's going on in their lives, and really at the end of the conversation you are exhausted and they feel a lot better, and it's always at their terms, then you really are, you should just watch out what's going on and maybe step away from someone. It's very important to realize that, especially when you're highly sensitive. We have this tendency of just helping people and, drawing in people, this wounded helper. That's what it's called, I think. It's also connected to the planet, not the planet. I think it's in astrology, it's connected to Chiron. That's this wounded healer. That's the word, wounded healer, I was thinking about. So it's this wounded healer you carry with you, and then you try to help other people. But by helping them, you're kind of stepping away from yourself. Especially when you're highly sensitive, it's very likely that you're not that grounded. A lot of people that are highly sensitive were, grew up in a very dysfunctional family, and they didn't have the strong basis that they needed, or how to deal with their emotions or their feelings. That's my personal, how I grew up. So I just didn't really want to be here. So I wasn't really grounded. And because of that, I do have this tendency of being in my higher chakras and trying to talk to people and help them. But at the same time, I didn't put up boundaries, not enough, or I would go overboard and completely isolate myself. That's a bit my character, or at least character in that way is the coping mechanisms. That's how I dealt with things, or try to really help people and get involved, and then suddenly I would step away and isolate myself because it was way too much and it was draining me. Because that is what's happening when you're not grounded, that people can drain you by telling you all these things and you don't really know how to handle them, or you try to help them. I've had this experience recently with someone I stepped away from. It was really for years the same conversation, and there was still some balance. She was asking about my life as well, so it wasn't like completely that it was only talking about her life, but she never made any changes, and this was going on for years, the same conversation every week, or sometimes even every other day. It was just exhausting to me because she wasn't taking the steps. She was just complaining about her relationship. She was complaining about the situation she was in with work, but she wasn't changing anything. And I'm talking years. So she's still in the same situation she was 4 years ago. She just complained about it in the meantime. And draining in a way, because it's very draining if you have to listen to the same thing over and over again. You come up with all kinds of solutions, things they can do, but they're not doing it. They just remain in this same attitude and the same complaints, and it was just exhausting at a certain time. So if that's happening to you, take a step back and see if this is still worth your time, your attention, and if you don't want to start protecting your energy, because it's just draining. Relationship, friendships, people, colleagues, with your family, it needs to be balanced. If there's no balance, it's time to step away, or to see if you can still, of course, talk to them, especially when it's concerning family, but make sure that you have your boundaries up in a way that it doesn't drain your energy. So that is important, especially for highly sensitive people, and to ground yourself, obviously, because when you ground yourself, you can start setting boundaries, what you do and do not want. And when that happens in your energy, then you don't have to be afraid of pulling in all these people with all these wounded people that just want to dump on you, that you're walking around like some garbage, how you pick up service, and that you're the one carrying around all their garbage, and you're exhausted and they're happy like, oh, well, I got rid of that. And next week I will be dumping my garbage again with this person. So that's the energetic garbage I'm talking about. It shouldn't work that way. There needs to be balanced. So the other thing is, I think DARVO, if I'm not mistaken. And DARVO is deny, attack, reverse, victim, and fender. And this is a technique that is used on so many levels. We see it in politics. We see it with certain behavior on the intimate level when someone hurts people at that level. We see it with people with psychopathic tendencies or narcissistic tendencies. We can have it even in our environment, in our family, at a very, the level, even in your relationships. This is a technique that when you have criticism, or you ask someone, or even in politics, when you actually want to say, hey, this is what happened, this is what you did, they will deny, they will attack you, and then they will reverse the roles. So suddenly you are in the wrong and you are accusing them of something that didn't happen. So they will deny. We have here our prime minister that does not have an active memory of things, even though it's like taped, so you can actually look it up. But no, he's no active memory on certain things. That's a technique to deny that it's happening, or he doesn't even know anymore what's happening. Then attacking, so changing the perspective, turning it on the person that is saying something, and then reversing the roles. It's a technique and a tactic used on so many levels. And it can happen in your relationship as well, or even you know, you have certain criticism, something that's not going well, and you ask, you know, this is not going well, how can we do this? You're doing this and this and this, or you have this and this behavior and it's hurting me. The other person will deny. It's like gaslighting. What are you talking about? I've never said that. That's not true. And making you feel crazy. That's part of gaslighting. Denying it. Then they start attacking you, and you have to watch out for that. Really watch out if people start attacking you with things that happened 10 years ago or 5 years ago. Yeah, but you did last month this, and this. Like, they keep a list. And I have to say, if people are doing that, you need to really step away from those people, because there are multiple things to it. So I first want to start with this. If people start dragging up things, first of all, that says that they were never really wanted to solve that. They just wanted to use that as munition to shoot you down at this moment, at the moment that you have criticisms about them, because they could have talked to you about this a long time ago. Why didn't they do that? Why didn't they solve this before? Wasn't this friendship or this family bond not important to them? Or even with your boss or your colleagues, you know, but I'm just going to focus on family and friends and relationship, that really they couldn't have mentioned this before. So they actually just come out with that as soon as you have some kind of criticism, or you want something to change about their behavior, or you just want to talk about something that they feel is criticism towards them. So they start using things. It's a deflection. And they actually purposely use this to deflect from what you came in with. So suddenly you're talking about something that happened 3 years ago, and you start defending yourself and talking about that. And then the entire fight has escalated completely, and usually things have completely changed in the dynamic. And that's exactly what they want. So there's a first thing that I want to say. If this happens, if you have certain things and you know someone can react in a very defensive way, make sure you stick to the subject. So if there's certain things you don't want happening, I don't want you to do this and this and this, remain with that. If they come up with other things, which is just a deflection, just say, that's something that happened at another time. I want to talk about this now, and then later we can talk about that. But I want to talk first about this. Then you'll see how they're going to react or not. And if they completely, how do you say this? It's almost impossible to continue a conversation. Of course, you can step back and then later on bring it up again. Very important that you stick to what you were talking about, because the other things is all deflection, getting away so they don't have to take responsibility. Another thing, don't explain yourself. Don't start defending yourself also with other things, because the problem is, especially when you're highly sensitive or just a decent human being, you hope that if the other person understands you, that the thing will be solved. So you start explaining your situation, your side, but they don't want to understand you. They don't want this criticism. They don't want to hear about that. They don't want to take responsibility. So they will never, even if they do understand you, that's not important to them. They just use it as ammo. They'll just take it and use it to deflect, to shoot you down, to start working on your guilt feelings, especially when you're very reasonable. They'll switch and turn it, and so they can actually, reverse roles. That's also part of DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, offender. It's the reversal. So they start accusing you of all kinds of things. So don't defend yourself. Don't give them ammo. Just say, I'm not happy with this. Just keep it short and as precise as possible, especially with someone that wants to use anything against you, and really stick to what you're talking about. And if, choose your battles wisely. If it doesn't make any sense at all, then it's time to just step away from this relationship, friendship, and see how this is going to work out, but protect your own energy. So in cases you do have to talk maybe to your boss or to people in your family, that's something you really want to talk about. And this is kind of a pitfall from people that are highly sensitive. I wanted to mention this as well. We do understand the other person, But we understand them so much that we kind of let them get away with behavior that we should stand up for, for like, no, we shouldn't tolerate that. But we understand why they're doing it. Now, there's nothing wrong with understanding someone, but that doesn't mean we need to tolerate that kind of behavior. Someone is pushing you all the time, or has criticisms, or just brings you, with remarks, try to cut you down verbally. You have the right to stand up and say something about that. And if they deny it, start attacking you, just stick to what you want to say. I don't want that happening. And then just step back if you can't really talk to this person at all. And then it's time to, find your own way and your own path and see if you still want to communicate with this person or not. Especially with family members, you kind of have to see how that will work out, but you need to protect your own energy and not tolerate behavior that is hurting you in any way. So I want to leave it at this, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye.